Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Cumberland Outdoorsman out here at my shooting bench with yet another edition from my 22 rimfire series. This will be titled Part 2 of our old 22's Accurate. Before I go on, let me express my heartfelt thanks for all of the well wishes and prayers that you folks out there have given us. It really did my heart and my wife's heart a lot of good to hear that there are folks out there that truly care. There are a lot of good people still in this world, and you're definitely amongst that crowd of people, and I appreciate you very, very much. So what I've got on the table here are the two 22s that I started the video with. If you haven't seen part 1, go back and watch that, and then you can come to this part. What I've done so far is I've taken the liberty to disassemble the Remington Model 121, and I'm getting ready to take apart this Remington 581 so I can do the restoration job on both rifles. So let me show you what I've got on the table here. Okay folks, here on the table I've got both rifles, one still assembled, one disassembled. This is the Remington Model 121, and I've soaked this down with some mineral oil to help break loose some of that very fine rust freckling there. It's not pitted, it's just a light surface rust, and I'll be going over that with a copper penny and some fine machining oil to get that rust off of there, to break it loose. Here is the tubular magazine and the cartridge guide. I'm going to be cleaning this up. This has a brass magazine tube inside this steel tube here. And then here I've got all the small parts. Here's the entire trigger and hammer assembly. This is the bolt assembly. I'll be cleaning all this up, just getting rid of some of the caked on oil and grease. And then I've got all the screws, everything all together. And this one tip I can leave you with is keep all your small parts in a container so that you don't lose them. And then I've got the wood furniture parts. This is the stock, of course, and as you can see, I'll give you a close-up. You can see all these scratches here, and you can see where the finish is starting to come off. A lot of nicks and gouges, places of imperfection that I can sand out of the gun. This is walnut, by the way, American walnut. And this is the fore end. It's not in too bad a shape, but as you can see, it's scratched up pretty well. The finish is scratched off, and I'll be going over it as well. Now with the Remington 581, I have not disassembled it. I thought I'd disassemble it while I've got you here at this point. And first thing you want to do, of course, is make sure that it's not loaded. You can see that it's empty. And Remington has made removing the bolt on these very easy. If you own one of these, whether it's a 580, 581, 582, 540 series, such as the 541, all you have to do is open the bolt, move it rearward like this, push all the way forward on the safety, and the bolt comes right out. Okay? Here I've got another container I'll be keeping all these parts in. Then we want to remove the magazine. These are made out of plastic. And by the way, folks, let me just mention that this is called a magazine, okay? In the last video, I inadvertently called this a clip, and I was corrected by one of the viewers. I know better. It was just an inadvertent terminology on my part. But a magazine, a box type magazine, is what holds the cartridges, and a clip is what holds cartridges all together so that they can be fed into a magazine. Of course, these 22s don't have that, but if you're familiar with the stripper clips for the older Mauser rifles, such as the Mauser Model 98 or the Springfield rifle, they had clips, and that's what held the cartridges in place so that you could feed them into the magazine very quickly. Okay, so I stand corrected, and a box type magazine is what holds your cartridges. So the proper terminology for this is a magazine, not a clip. No big deal. I think everybody knew what I was talking about, but since I'm presenting this on a public platform, I should use the proper terminology. Anyway, let's get back to disassembling this Remington 581. All right. So we have the magazine removed. Now I want to remove this barrel shroud. This is also made out of plastic. It's very durable. I mean, just because it's plastic doesn't mean that it's low quality. These are very durable. I've had them on my rifles for many, many years. You got to remember, Remington made these rifles at a time when that company was owned by DuPont, and so DuPont came up with a lot of the plastic parts for these guns. Okay. Once again, we're going to use the right screwdriver bit. I've already removed the rear sight here. So just take that screw out. Keep it together with all your parts. There you can see underneath the barrel shroud, there's some rust. All that's going to be removed. Now then, we're going to go ahead and remove the barrel action from the stock. That's the screwdriver tip that you should use. It fits in that slot perfectly. It just makes it easier on you as well when you use the right tools for the job. See, there's some rust on that bolt, on that assembly bolt. All that's going to be cleaned up. Now the action just lifts right out. Wow, look at that. Look at all that rust, folks. So we got a job ahead of us. I'm going to be cleaning up this trigger guard. I'm going to totally disassemble this trigger assembly here and going through it and making sure that everything's in order here. I've got a video on this. If you have not seen that video, go back to my channel. I should leave a link in the description below, but I have a video where I go into great detail and show you exactly how to fully service the trigger mechanism on the 580 series rifles. This also applies to the 590, such as the 591 and 592 series rifles, and also the Remington model 788. Same trigger design. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with this trigger design. It's a great trigger, and a lot of the complaints that I hear and read about are simply due to lack of service. Okay, everything needs to be serviced. The better you maintain your equipment, the better it's going to work for you. Okay, now it's time to remove the bottom metal off of the stock. I've already done some cleanup on this trigger guard here, and as you can see, it turned out really well. I'll go over it a little bit more and add some bluing to this. Now you've got a small screw here that holds this plate on. Make sure you use the right screwdriver bit. I'm going to emphasize that, folks. A lot of people use the same screwdriver for the whole gun, and there are different size screws on every type of gun. Yep, not in bad shape, but still needs to be cleaned up. Keep everything together. Now on the rear, I'm going to leave this intact. Okay, I'm going to leave this on here. The screws are in good shape, as you can see. No need to take this off because I'm just going to lightly go over this stock. I'm not going to do a high gloss finish as I mentioned in the first video. I'm just going to go over it, get a lot of these scratches and dings out of it. You know, places where the gun has been scuffed a little bit. Actually, the stock's not in bad shape at all. And by the way, this is one of the earlier Model 581 rifles, the 580 series, and Remington used real American walnut. So this stock is very much worth preserving. So come along with me. Let's go to my den and let's get started on these old rifles. And I'll take you through all the steps and show you how I will turn these old rifles into something that's a little more presentable, because as we saw in the first video, they're great shooters. You know, they have a lot of potential and they just need a little bit of TLC, and that's what we're going to give them. So come along with me. Well, my friends, we're back here in my den, and I've got both of these rifles mostly disassembled, and I'm getting ready to do some cleaning work on the barrel actions and also on the smaller parts that we've got assembled in these little containers. So let me go ahead and pan down here. First of all, I'm going to put some gloves on because we're dealing with some chemicals here. Here I've got my barreled actions, and then the wooden furniture for the guns is over on the side here. But here are all the small parts, the screws and everything else. And some of the things you're going to need if you're going to do this the way I'm doing it is some fine steel wool and a real copper penny. You know, make sure you get the real thing. You can tell a real copper penny by the color. Most of the newer copper pennies are not real copper. You know, you don't want anything that'll scratch the metal on your guns, so make sure you get the real thing. This one here is a 1971, so I think we're pretty safe in that regard. I'll go ahead and get these gloves on. These are just rubber surgical gloves, pretty much. And I'm trying to protect my skin here from this stuff. This is kerosene here. It's not too bad, but some of this penetrating oil will seep into your skin, and it's just safer to wear gloves. That way you don't get it in your system. Some of it can be rather harsh. Anyway, I'll get these here on. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of rust on this barreled action. First I'm going to take this trigger off. This is the 581. And by taking this off, I can also go in and do some work on the trigger itself. Okay folks, I got some penetrating oil here, some of my own mixture, and we'll let that sit. Don't want to put any of these plastic parts in there, so we'll set these aside. First order of business is getting some of this metal soaked down that has rust all over it. Want to kind of apply the kerosene here, just initially. And we'll put some of this penetrating oil on there as well. That's really starting to soak in good now. Do the same thing with this little pump action here. You can see there where that, on the barrel, where the rust is starting to lift just by applying this penetrating oil. Now, I'll take this copper penny, put it in this kerosene, and start rubbing against the rust. And you can feel it lifting right off of there. It's starting to actually pull the rust right out of that metal. Tonight we're just going to loosen it up and let it sit. I'm not going to take it off. I'm going to leave it on the metal. What it'll do is it'll actually soften the oxidation that's in the metal, or the rust actually, and it'll help lift it out of there a lot easier. And the copper is soft enough where it won't scratch the steel. But there you can see that rust freckling on there? It's starting to lift already. Now we'll let this stuff sit, let it soak in real good, and then we'll attack it again tomorrow. Okay folks, we've allowed these parts to soak overnight in penetrating oil, and it looks like it's really starting to work very well on these metal parts. And now we're going to go over it once again and see if we can break up some more of this rust. One thing I should mention though is I had a hard time breaking loose this set screw on this model 581 trigger group, so I had to apply some heat to be able to move that screw right there, because if you don't loosen this screw right here on this end before you take this trigger group out, you just try to punch out this little pin right here, you could break this trigger housing, because this is just aluminum, you know, it's very brittle. So before you take it loose, if you own one of these, make sure that you loosen this tension screw right here on the end, and then you can safely remove that pin or punch it out. So I'm going to go over this some more with this copper penny and try to break up the rest of the rust now that it's softened overnight. I went over it yesterday with this copper penny to try to, you know, help loosen it a little bit so that the penetrating oil could work its way into it. And it looks like everything is starting to slough off of there now. But I'm going to go over every square inch of this barrel and receiver and everything else. I don't want any rust to remain on the metal parts. You can feel that rust breaking loose. You can feel all those little rough patches in there starting to smooth out as you go over it with this copper penny. And don't worry about it. This copper is really soft. It's not going to hurt it a bit. I've done this in previous videos and I've always had good results every time I've used copper to loosen up this rust. Now it won't help pitting. If the metal is pitted, it's not really going to help it, but it'll still remove a lot of the rust, the surface rust that's on there. You know, get it down to bare metal. I mean, if you had the facilities, the time and the money and everything, you could take all this down to bare metal and have it professionally hot blued, but there's very few places left that actually do that anymore. At one time, you know, having a gun reblued was a pretty common practice. But since the EPA has tightened up on the requirements for gunsmiths to re-blue guns, a lot of guys have gotten out of it. So if you want to try to preserve as much of the bluing, the factory bluing, as you can, this is the way to go in most cases. And you can blend a lot of the bare spots in with the factory bluing using cold bluing. You know, if you do it correctly, it's pretty durable actually. Okay, once you're done with the penny, we're going to take some fine steel wool and dip it in the kerosene and go over it, over all the metal parts. All right. Now I'm going to clean this off and take a close look at it. Now what I want to do is I'm going to completely take any oil off of it, and I'm using acetone because we're going to prep it. Okay, that's clean. Now we're going to add some of this perma-blue paste. We're going to do the barrel first, and then we're going to do the receiver. It's important to get all the oil or any impurities off of the metal before you apply this, because otherwise it just won't take, and it won't stay on there either. The bluing will not penetrate into the steel to cause the oxidation process that's necessary to turn it into a nice blue-black color. Let that sit for a minute and let it work. Well, folks, you really need to be wearing gloves because it says right there, danger. You know, don't expose your skin to this stuff. because it is toxic. Yeah, that's starting to look a lot better already. Nice even strokes of this bluing solution will get you more uniform results. You don't want any blotchiness. You can see where some of the metal, where it was bare, we got all the rust off, and it's now a nice blue-black color. So I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes. I'm going to put a little bit more on there and let it set. Now I'm going to go ahead and degrease the receiver. Acetone does a great job of getting all the grease off of the metal. And that's what you need. There's a spot that I missed right there on the end. Alright folks, one of my secrets to getting a nice cold blue finish, even if it's to fortify what you've got on there that's left over from the factory finish, is to flush it in hot water and detergent. And then I'm going to apply another coat after I dry this off. I'll apply another coat of bluing, and then you'll start seeing some results. The bluing doesn't really apply anything to the metal. All it does is oxidize the steel to turn it a different color. It doesn't put any coating on there, really. People say, oh, we're going to put a coat of bluing on there. That's not what it does. It just darkens it with each progressive step, because it changes the surface of the steel. So it's not like putting on a coat of paint or anything like that. The reason I put it on pretty thick is because I want a nice even covering over the metal. The muzzle crown looked pretty bad on this gun, but I think I'm starting to bring it back pretty well, and that's a good way to judge how well you're doing with your bluing process, is to check and see what the muzzle looks like. There you can see it's starting to come around pretty good. Well friends, I've got this barreled action reassembled for the model 581 Remington, and it turned out pretty good. I went ahead and cleaned the trigger assembly and got everything reassembled there, and it's working flawlessly. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. Here I've got this bottom metal just hanging on right now, and I'll be reassembling the rest of this once I get the stock redone. I've got the model 121 action and barrel cleaned up quite well, and I'll be going over the stock when I get done with the other one. Here I've been sanding on this 581 stock. Got most all the irregularities and the imperfections out of the stock. I go over it several times to make sure I get all the scratches out. And even though this is American black walnut, I could go ahead and just put my True Oil on here now, but I'd like to darken the stock up a little bit and also seal all the pores. So I've got some stain, some dark walnut stain here that I mixed up just to kind of blend everything together. And we'll go ahead and apply that now and let that dry. And then tomorrow I'll be putting the True Oil on this stock. But right now I just want to rub it down with this stain and seal all the pores. Give it a nice even color. And at the same time bringing all the grain of the wood back out. I just kind of apply it and then I'll wipe it down to even out the distribution of the stain all over the stock. I think you'll agree with me, it really gives it a nice color. I like to let this stuff sit for about 15 to 20 hours or so before I apply the first coats of True Oil. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and wipe it down. Normally I don't stain black walnut, but in this case, since there were some lighter colors in the wood, I like to even it all out. So I go over it with this stain, and that aids in the even coloration all over the stock. I'm not going to give this a really glossy finish anyway, so I'll just put a few coats of True Oil on here and then buff it out. And there you have it, folks. That'll be the color of this rifle stock. Well, folks, I got these gun stocks refinished, and I've got all the metal hardware, the barreled actions and all the screws and all the metal that goes on the wood furniture cleaned up and re-lubed and everything. Here I've got the 581 action back together with the trigger and the magazine latch and guide. The bolt is in place. And I've got the trigger guard and all the bottom metal, like I said, ready to be put back on to the stock. I'm just sitting here polishing it out right now. I don't want to make a really high gloss stock out of this, just a kind of a satiny finish on this walnut stock. It's not a showpiece by any means. It's just a good little shooter that I would be proud to take into the woods and do some squirrel hunting, or just to take it out here on my range and do some target shooting with it. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put everything back together here in just a moment. Here is the model 121. Now this one here has a little bit of a glossier finish, as you can see. I need to clean it up a little bit before I get ready to use it, but I've got it completely reassembled, and as you can see, a lot of the figure in that wood has really come out beautifully. There's the other side. I just love American walnut. So anyway, we're going to get these guns back out and get them sighted in. I'm going to re-sight the iron sights on this model 581 because I want to make sure that it's on the money in case I ever decide to take the scope off. I am going to be installing an old Tasco. This one here was made in Japan. This is an older scope, and in my opinion, the older scopes, whether they were Tasco or Bushnell or whatever, the ones that were made in Japan were just of better quality. So if you can find an older one like that, chances are real good, if it's in good shape, that it'll make a good optic for your 22. So I'm going to go ahead and finish polishing out this stock here. I'll give you a close-up here. Although it's walnut, there's not much figure in this wood, but still has a nice rich color. And I took all the scratches and gouges out of it. Just did a nice cleanup job on this old 22. And we'll get them out and shoot them. And once I get the scope mounted on this gun, we'll see what she's got. So come along with me. Well, folks, there's the gun fully reassembled. And I'm getting ready to take it outside and get these iron sights sighted in. So like I said, come along with me and let's see how well this little rifle performs. Well, folks, I got the scope mounted on this 581 and I think I've got it sighted pretty good, pretty close. I'm going to shoot 5 shots at 50 yards down there and see how well this gun will perform using CCI standard velocity. So let's take a few shots and let's see what she's got. Got my rounds loaded up here. Take a look at what we're shooting at down here. There you can see that orange dot. I've got 2 shots in it already. All right, we'll check it out here. Well, folks, first of all, I sighted this bolt action Remington in with open sights, and that was the first shot, so I had to move the sights over a bit, and I got 2 shots right there, and then I moved them again a little bit more, and I held just a little bit low, and I got 2 shots right there. This is at 25 yards. So that's pretty good. You know, I'm pretty well satisfied with the open sights or the iron sights being on the money. Now, in regards to the scope being on, here you can see, disregard this shot. This was from another gun. But the first shot hit a little bit low right there. I was holding right in the center, and then I saw that the shot dropped low at 50 yards because I had that scope sighted in for 25, so it dropped a little bit. Then the other 4 subsequent shots I held right here at 12 o'clock, a little bit high right there, and that's 4 shots that dropped right into the center of that target, and 3 of them went right through that center right there. I mean, that's phenomenal accuracy, really, and all 4 of those shots can be covered with a penny. So the question remains, are old 22s accurate? Absolutely. And if you run across one of these old timers and it's in pretty good shape, you know, I would probably recommend looking down the bore if you get a chance. Make sure that the barrel is in good shape, that there's no rust or pitting inside the bore. And you know, you're going to be spending your money, your hard-earned money, on a gun that you want to shoot accurately. So there's nothing wrong with asking the person that's selling the gun whether or not you can run a cleaning patch down through the barrel to make sure the rifling and everything's in good shape. You know, that's one thing I did not have the luxury of doing with this gun because I bought it online on an online auction, but I was pleased to see that once I cleaned the barrel, I had a nice shiny bore, all the rifling was crisp, and that's the reason it shoots groups like that at 50 yards. So with these old 22s like this, you know, you're not going to be spending as much money as a brand new gun, but you're going to be getting more gun for your money. I didn't test this 121 on the target down here, but now let me give you a warning. These older pump action Remingtons and Winchesters, they can fetch quite $1. You know, they bring quite a bit of money. So folks, because these old 22s like this Remington 121 are truly accurate rifles, they're great shooters if they're in good shape. You know, I just can't see throwing them in the corner and just leaving them in bad condition. That's why I wanted to refinish the stock and get the metal back in good, presentable condition so that they can be enjoyed for years to come. As you can see now, the grain shows up really well in this stock. I went ahead and reconditioned the butt plate. There was bare metal showing back here, and I put a baked on satin finish on there. And then the fore end, of course, you can see that gorgeous burl walnut there. I mean, True Oil really did a good job in restoring the wood furniture of this old gun. And as you well know from the first video, this is a good shooter right here. At 25 yards, I got 4 bullets in the same hole. So, are old 22s accurate? I think that answers the question. And because they're so accurate, they're very well worth maintaining and saving so that other folks, you know, these are family heirlooms, I'm sure your children or your grandchildren can enjoy them one day as well. So, you know, I just love these old 22s, as you can tell by now, and that's the reason I like restoring these old guns. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close out. It's really cold out here. As you can see, we've got quite a snow on. The snow hasn't hardly melted any in 4 days. It's just been frigid out here. I think right now it's about 8 degrees and it's just absolutely freezing. So I'm going to head back inside. I would love to stay out here and shoot some more, but my hands are starting to get numb. But let me remind you, if you like to go hunting, fishing, camping, shooting, hiking, whatever your outdoor pursuit happens to be, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And also remember this, hit that like button, smash the bell icon, and subscribe. That way you'll know when more videos like this one will be coming your way. So until next time, y'all take good care of yourselves, try to keep warm, and get out there and enjoy the great outdoors. I'll be seeing you.